Tonight, let us continue to pray for all those affected by the shootings in Dayton 9 days ago. Most especially those who lost their lives and those wounded, as well as their family and friends. Let us also pray for the Betts family, who must carry an especially heavy burden from now on. And however difficult it may be, our faith in our Lord's example teaches us to pray for everyone without exception. So let us also pray for mercy for the soul of Connor Betts. Last time I said in response to this tragedy that this wasn't how things were supposed to be, that our Lord had intended things to be different. That statement very briefly touched in a fleeting way on 3 topics: natural law, human freedom, and the formation of conscience. So tonight I thought I would talk about natural law, and then next week discuss human freedom and the formation of conscience. If we were in the seminary or getting a degree in theology, this topic would be in a class on moral theology. No, I'm not a moral theologian, but the fundamental, the core principles of moral theology are easy to understand. They really are. But if you get these fundamental principles wrong, or try to redefine them in some purely humanistic or atheistic way, the result will be very much like the chaos and evil we are seeing in our culture today. Moral behavior, that is, what is right and wrong, is rooted in what we call natural law. Natural law used to be widely accepted and acknowledged throughout the world and was the fundamental basis for almost all legal systems. Human law had binding force because it was based on the precepts of natural law. This has fallen out of favor, however, because natural law is inherently theistic. That is, it inherently acknowledges a divine creator from which natural law was revealed. Did you know that our Declaration of Independence cites natural law as the basis for breaking our political ties with England? Our justification for declaring ourselves a sovereign nation was, quote, "the laws of nature and of nature's God," unquote. That's natural law. The basis of the unalienable rights and self-evident truths that the Declaration of Independence espouses are natural law. But that is not popular anymore. But the fact that something isn't popular, isn't in fashion, or that it has fallen out of favor does not mean that it's not true. And natural law still exists and is true whether the Supreme Court likes it or not. And most of them don't, by the way, because natural law is more supreme than any Supreme Court ruling. That's why slavery was still evil, even though Dred Scott, the decision of Dred Scott by the Supreme Court, upheld the legality of slavery. That's why abortion is still a grave moral evil, even though it is the so-called settled law of the land. Natural law forbids the killing of the innocent, however many laws permit it. However many reaffirmations of Roe versus Wade the United States Supreme Court may care to make, notwithstanding. Now, natural law sounds complicated, but it really isn't. Let's start at the beginning. For example, there are physical laws of nature, gravity, the speed of light, the conservation of mass, and so on. It's how God deemed physical reality would work. If you throw a rock up into the air, it will come back down. That's simply how gravity works. Easy, right? Natural law works in somewhat the same way. We get closer to what we mean by natural law when we talk about animals, for they have a nature more like our own. It is in the nature of birds to fly and fish to swim. This is their God-given nature. This is how God made them. And they have neither the capacity, the desire, or the capability to do otherwise. Fish must live in water. Birds fly and breathe air. Birds can't live in water like fish do. That's not part of their nature. It's not natural for them. They have their own unique behaviors and capabilities that are natural to them. We do too. We are part of the animal kingdom and have certain behaviors that we do by nature, like breathing air, eating, walking, speaking, and so on. We're subject to physical laws just like everything else in the material world, and we have unique characteristics due to our nature as humans, much in the same way as animals do. However, we're not just animals. We're rational animals. That is, we not only have intelligence, we also have a rational intellect. We've been given the ability to reason, to reflect on our own existence, to imagine. We have self-awareness, consciousness, in a way animals don't. And we have the ability to choose to act according to our nature or not. God gave us this freedom to choose, but we are not lawless beings in an ordered universe, as the Catholic Encyclopedia put it so well. Our freedom has limits, and the fundamental limits are set down in what is called natural law, which might be easier to grasp if I call it the law of human nature. Unlike physical laws, the law of human nature is how we ought to behave, how we must behave to be fully human. But unlike the law of gravity, which we will obey whether we want to or not, we can choose to violate natural law and say, kill an innocent person. Even so, we know that that's wrong without being taught it. God has written that core principle in our hearts, as it were. These core principles, at their most fundamental level, are rooted in the law of human nature and can be summarized as, do good and avoid evil. Do good and avoid evil. It doesn't get much simpler than that. The only reason anyone does anything is because they perceive some good in it. And everyone obeys this law without exception. But how can this be, given all the evil there is in the world? This is clearly a big area, so let's limit ourselves to the topic at hand. Evil due to human beings, that is, moral evil. One reason there's moral evil is because our rational intellect makes mistakes. Original sin damaged our ability to recognize the good and to consistently formulate rational moral principles. So people sometimes simply make mistakes about what is good. That's one reason there's evil. Something that is objectively evil we perceive as a good. The other reason there's evil in the world is some ignore another fundamental moral precept, that one may not do evil, that good may come of it. Whereas the former was a defect in the intellect, this is a defect in the will. Some choose to do what they acknowledge as evil to achieve some so-called good. For instance, the more radical supporters of abortion will acknowledge they're killing a human being, but rationalize their choice by saying that a woman's right to control her own body is more important than a human life. Now, I know that this may have been a bit abstract and academic, but I think this is all necessary background and foundational for talking about human freedom and formation of conscience that I'll do next time. But let me close with some quotes from the Catechism of the Catholic Church on where we learn that the 10 Commandments themselves are part of the natural law. This is from paragraphs 2070 and following, which state in part, "From the beginning, God had implanted in the hearts of man the precepts of natural law. There he was content to remind him of him. Then, rather, he was content to remind him of them. This is the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments, although accessible to reason alone, have been revealed to us to attain a complete and certain understanding of the requirements of natural law. Sinful humanity needed this revelation because the light of reason was obscured and the will had gone astray." You'll recall that our Lord said the greatest of all the commandments were to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. That is why the natural law is so very important, because that is how things are supposed to be.